As I mentioned in my last video, spooky season is my favorite, and I am continuing on with that trend today by drawing a fun little pumpkin on some black paper. Hi, Shanna Rowe Jackson here from Caution Artist at Play, and today is going to be all about utilizing the black of the paper and having fun with different art supplies. I have my Faber-Castell Pan Pastel pencils here to do my preliminary sketch, and I am using the Stonehenge Aqua Black Hot Press Paper by Legion. Now, I have to say, I probably chose the wrong paper for this particular artwork because I am coming in with colored pencils later, and the colored pencils kind of tear this paper up a little bit. This is 100% cotton paper, and it is fantastic for gouache and acrylic wash and watercolor, acrylics, and it's pretty good for the pastels. And had I just stuck with my pastel pencils, it probably would have been fine, but colored pencils do tend to wear the paper out a little bit. So I recommend, if you're going to do a similar project, to use something like the Canson Me Tints or a black mixed media paper. This video is not sponsored by any of the companies mentioned, by the way. So I went in and I am just doing a fun little preliminary sketch. I'm not worried about if it's perfectly symmetrical because the pumpkin I'm drawing is not perfectly symmetrical. In fact, no pumpkins are. I am using a reference photo that I took in my own yard a couple years ago now probably, and it's really, really dark. I took it with my phone. There was some artificial light that lit up the pumpkin a little bit, and then the background you can see trees, and it's on a rock that has moss. And I just loved all the textures and the contrast of the orange pumpkin to the black trees in the background with a little bit of sky peeking through. And so I thought that using black paper would be the perfect opportunity to kind of give that nice spooky mood while giving us a fun chance to use pastels to get that contrast in there. Now, I end up switching to my Derwent drawing colored pencils later on because I don't have a lot of pastel pencils, and I was running into issues where I couldn't get all the saturation that I needed with them because I didn't really have all the colors that I needed even to mix. And so I ended up switching later on, and the Derwent drawing pencils do tend to be very soft, and they're like an in-between pastel and colored pencil. More colored pencil than pastel. You will see that later on. I also bring in some Pan Pastels to do some fun effects and to get some underpaintings once my pumpkin is drawn out. Obviously, I'm working on the stem now, and here I'm coming in with those Pan Pastels. I'm just mixing like a brown and an orange. And I have to apologize. I paused my video and I missed some freaking footage, and I'm very upset about that. So we come back and the pumpkin is filled in with Pan Pastel, and I also missed some of the shading on the left hand of the side of the page, so that's underneath. I am using some glassine to protect my artwork from my hand from smudging while I'm working on the pumpkin. And now I'm coming in with those Derwents. I love the Derwent drawing pencils. I have a recent video on these pencils. You should definitely check it out. I also have a video using this paper with gouache so you can see it really shine in its element. And I had this piece of paper cut already from when I had done like a workshop or something with it. I already had like a piece of paper cut to size, so that's kind of why I grabbed this paper. And I am impressed with how well the pastel does. Now, for any of the corrections that I need to make, I do have a black eraser. I will link that in the description below as well. It works perfectly on black paper. You can see it doesn't leave a lot of residue like a white eraser would. And I loved it. It lifted all the layers I needed, and the paper handled the erasing really well too. It's not until we get with the pencils and we have a lot of layers that it starts kind of chipping away at the paper later on. So I'm just coming in and working on that base layer. I was not too picky when I used my Pan Pastels. I just wanted an underpainting to make it easier to cover some of that black. Now, I don't need all the black to be covered because I want the paper to do some of the work for me. This paper, I'm choosing a black paper to help set the mood. I want the whole thing to be dark. And when you work on black paper, no matter how light you make your layers, a little bit of it is going to shine through, and there is going to be that inherent darkness there. So just keep that in mind. I'm here for a moody piece, not so much a photorealistic piece. And I really think I achieved that here. And you're going to see me go back and forth a lot with a lot of experimenting. It's been a very long time since I've used Pan Pastels or pastel pencils. Obviously, I'm more experienced with colored pencil, but it's been quite a while since I've used them on black paper as well. And I actually came at this in a way that I normally don't. Normally, I do my background first, and then I do my subject. Today, I just wanted to jump right into the pumpkin. In my layers, if I need to darken things back up, I come back in with darker pencils. If I need to bring black in, I will for shadows. And I also use a lot of browns. I also bring in a really nice dark red Caran d'Ache luminance pencil at some point. It was the closest I had to a magenta, and I really like to shade my oranges with like a magenta color. And the deep red, I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm sorry, I'm battling a cold right now, so I'm really fuzzy. It worked really, really well for that in some of the shadow areas as well. And most of the pumpkin is actually a lot of different browns and ochres and things like that. Not so much an actual orange, especially the parts that are in shadow. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, the rock in my original reference photo had some moss growing on it, and originally I had planned to do that moss, but I wanted this to be a quick, fun project, and as I got into trying to do the moss, I found it to be distracting from the pumpkin, and I also just found it to be unnecessary detail. And so once I got in and started doing my underlayer with my Pan Pastels, I thought, you know what, this kind of looks a little bit smoky or misty, which is perfect for this theme. So ultimately, I do end up going with the misty look instead. So right now you can see I'm playing around with possibly putting details in. And this is one of those things, like you may have a vision for your piece, and then once you get into it, you decide to switch gears, and that's perfectly fine. I do that a lot with this piece. Again, there was a lot of experimenting. I just wanted to sit down, do something spooky, and you know, just get the feel of the darkness and the contrast between the pumpkin and its surroundings. Now I'm doing the little bit of sky that is peeking through the trees. Now with the trees, I'm leaving it mostly the black of the paper. Other than at the sky edge itself, I might come in later with some black pencil and try and like neaten up the trees to make it look more like trees. But for the most part, I am using that black of the paper to my advantage. And it's helping create that midnight kind of mood. And I'm coming in and just kind of smearing things around a little bit. I have some, I think they're like these wand tools. They're by Jane Davenport, and I'm using those a lot, not just my soft tools, but those wand tools work really well as well. Now here's a part that you can really see where the paper gets a little bit messed up by those pencils. And I only had a few layers of Pan Pastel down, but I tried to come in and do my moon, and it didn't work out very well. I was a little bit frustrated, so I stepped away from that part, and I came back to the pumpkin and decided to put some moonlight highlights on the pumpkin, because I knew I wanted to add a moon. My original reference doesn't have a moon in it, but I wanted the moon to be in there, so I came back and reassessed later. Again, it ends up messing things up. I actually brought in my Holbein soft white, and ultimately that ends up being the pencil I'm able to use to get the moon in there. But again, it got too big. I didn't like it. So I ended up erasing it out and then keeping that as part of the trees coming down. So again, using the black of the paper. And then I added in the moon and a few stars. And I end up neatening up that chunk there a little bit later with pencils. I don't know if that's on camera or not. Then I'm just coming back to my pumpkin and reassessing and seeing if there's anything else I need to add. I'm adding in some pine needles. I wanted to create more of a surface down below, neaten up the shadows below the pumpkin so it didn't feel quite like it was floating. And then I'm coming in and neatening up those trees with a pencil and putting some reflected light. Now, one thing about this is that it looks different on camera than it does in person, and then it also looks different scanned in, and you're gonna have that a lot with the black paper because depending on the lighting, the black paper may not be very dark. When I scan it in, it shows up darker. It's very strange. So I'm only gonna sell prints of this image, especially since I had some issues with the paper. But I do like the way it's scanned in. And this is the scanned version of it. It's very dark, it's very moody, and you can really, really see the aspects of that black paper showing through the medium. Overall, I really enjoyed the process, and I'm happy that I got to break out the pan pastels and use those again. I need to do that more often, and I'm looking forward to doing more pieces like this. Prints and products of this piece are available on my print site. I will link it below. You have a very spooky day. Bye! Wait, don't go away just yet. If you liked this video, you're sure to like this one too. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe.